Hello, my friends, and welcome back to another exciting module here in Biology 102 and the accompanying lab, Biology 102L, also known as General Biology 2, where we want to be able to ask questions and then use evidence-based learning and inquiry to be able to answer those questions dealing with phenomena that occurs in the natural world all around us. So in this part of the class, as we slowly approach the end of the semester, we are now deep in thematic section number 3, where we want to be able to tell the stories of life on our planet. And we want to be able to track one of life's boldest adventures across deep time. And this week, we are talking about one of the boldest moves any living thing on our planet has ever made. And when life said, you know what, I'm just done with everything here in the water, let's go try land. That's right, everybody. This week's module, we're going to be diving into the absolute wild story about how vertebrates, animals with backbones, part of the chordata, but also plants, left behind their aquatic realms and made the leap, literally, into more terrestrial settings. This wasn't just a cool biological moment, but an actual phenomena we can study. It was the beginning, really, of every forest, prairie, mountain ecosystem you see today. And without this move, there probably would be no biodiversity that we see today here on land. As one of the organisms is considered to be our inner fish. Here is a 3D model of our planet Earth, a small pale blue dot floating in space as it orbits the sun. And when we take a look at our pale blue dot, we can see that the continents are in the more traditional configuration that we have seen in many science classrooms as we navigate and explore the configuration. But there is a theory in science. It's called the plate tectonic theory, described by and documented by Alfred Wagner, who used several lines of evidence to be able to support that at one point, and still ongoing, is that our continents are constantly drifting over long periods of time, and that the modern configuration that we see today is just one of many versions of our planet Earth based upon the configuration. But this website is really cool because it allows us to venture into the past and see what our planet looked like in different parts of Earth's history. So what I'm going to do is I am going to go in the search bar and type in our location of where Eastern West Virginia Community and Technical College's main campus will be located. And that is located in the city of Moorefield, West Virginia. And we can see here that red dot is home. But we want to take a look at life in the past and see what the biogeography may have actually looked like. Because after all, landscape ecology forms based upon the geography of a given area. And because we are telling the story of great transitions, let's rewind time and jump. Time for the first land animals. This is what our planet Earth looked like during the Devonian, approximately 400 or so million years, give or take 10 million. But the Devonian period is when life on land becomes more complex as plants develop Insects, arthropods diversify, and fish develop sturdy limbs from their fins. And this eventually allows them to walk on land. Oceans and coral reefs host a diverse range of different types of fish, sharks, even sea scorpions called eurypterids, and variety of different cephalopods. But when we zoom in, when we look right here, we start to see the earliest apple formations of the Appalachian mountain range, extending all the way northwards. And that West Virginia, along with many of the other Appalachian states, are dotting the coastline, which may have looked like early swamps back 400 million years ago. And I think this is really interesting because it sets a transitional geographic setting from, say, the open ocean that you would see close to Ohio, moving more inward towards land. Perfect environments for allowing both plants and animals to invade onto land. And that's where we're going to find some of our main characters this week. Lobed fin fish, like the famous Tiktaalik, which, when you take a look at it, isn't your average fish. It's got bones in its fins that look suspiciously like limbs. It has a neck that is rather mobile, and possibly, based on phylogenetic inference, complex lungs. I mean, come on, it's halfway becoming a land animal when you just look at its external morphology. When you look at its ecological context, it's wandering around some of these swamps, trying to leave that aquatic ecosystem. When we break it down, when we take a look at the fossils of Tiktaalik, it's where anatomy gets really awesome. Tiktaalik had bones in its fins that correspond to actually our humerus, radius, and ulna. Basically, your upper and lower arms. And the configuration was strong enough to help it push itself up, much like how we do push-ups in our exercises. And doing so allows it to prop itself up in shallow water as it looks for food on land. That neck mobility, when you think about it, most fish, they can't actually move their heads separately from their bodies. And that is a key innovation because Tiktaalik could. It allows it to survey for potential prey items on land. It allows for better awareness to escape other predators, such as maybe larger Tiktaaliks. But it also allowed for a shift in its skull to allow for maybe features like hearing and deeper sensory perception. We also see a transformation of lungs and gills because it actually had both when we take a look at a 3D model provided for you in your lab portion of the course. It means that it could survive in low oxygen environments by gulping air. Super useful for thriving in swampy shallows, that seasonal droughts, varying oxygen levels, and even predators looking at every pool. So anything that helps you survive just outside the water, such as limbs, changing how your lungs work, are all total game changers that ultimately leads to the survival of your species and allows your species to continue over different periods of time as you're allowed to reproduce from generation to the next. All reliant on that biogeographic context. took their first steps onto land, plants had already started the terrestrial takeover, as I like to call it. Lycophytes, ferns, some seeded, early seeded ferns, eventually that would progress into traditional gymnosperms. These were the green pioneers. They transformed Earth's surfaces from bare rock into the first true terrestrial ecosystems at this time. They didn't just show up and chill. They engineered the land, and that eventually enticed animals to move from the aquatic realm into inland. But let's quickly review plant anatomy for a second, especially with a special reference for the plants at this time. Well, for plants, they have what they call vascular tissues containing xylem and phloem as structures. This allowed water and nutrients to travel upwards, letting these plants grow taller and taller, eventually competing for sunlight and establishing some of the first forests. They had the start of deep root systems, important for anchoring them into soil and absorbing nutrients from it. Great for swamps because there is actually a lot of nutrients found there. Some plants develop waxy cuticles in what we call stomata, and this prevents water loss and manages gas exchange. But also seeds and spores. These allow the plants to reproduce and not rely so much on water for fertilization. This is a huge innovation as it could allow them to further increase their range inland into drier and drier environments. And two, with that, the animals will follow. But in the case of Tiktaalik, it was still figuring out how to breathe air, and plants out there were just greening up Tiktaalik's new home and reshaping the atmosphere, allowing for more innovation to follow. But when we take a look at the fossil record found within these coal beds, we find wonderful examples of this transition from sea to land. We'll find examples of plants like Lepidendron, a giant club moss that helped get the first forest started and could grow upwards of 100 feet tall. But it's not a true tree. There's Moldulsa, which is a early seed fern, known for its massive fronds and the start of early woody stems. There are arthropods the size of dinner plates and even longer. Some of the largest centipedes are found here, and possibly a prey item for some of these early tetrapods like Tiktaalik. And deep within the layers, we again find these transitional tetrapods like sister taxa to Tiktaalik, like Ichthyostega and Acanthostega, where they still carry those aquatic traits, but clearly adapted for a transition from those aquatic realms more inland because they had stronger vertebral columns to support their massive flat heads, limbs with digits, though some still had webbing on them for swimming, based upon fossil track evidence that we can actually collect right here in the Appalachians. They also have lateral line systems from their fishy ancestors that suggest that they were restructuring the bones in their skull to develop hearing, which is perfect for hunting some of those giant arthropods or each other, as these were the giant carnivores at this time. These weren't fully true land dwellers, not just yet. We get into those more, but they were more like amphibians stuck in a world between two extremes. But they are considered to be our planet's pioneers, moving from ecosystem biome to the next, and essentially engineering their ecology to suit their needs and allow for more and more innovation to occur. How do we know all of this? Well, it's thanks to the work of paleontologists, such as my colleagues and myself, who piece together these clues of Earth's past, bone by bone, layer by layer, essentially using evidence-based inquiry and modeling to be able to answer questions dealing with natural science phenomena, a cornerstone of this course. We study not just the fossils, but we also take a look at the sedimentary rock layers where those fossils can be found in to figure out how these ecosystems function and how can we better inform ourselves about phenomena that has occurred in the past and how can we better learn about the future. We can use a lot of this evidence to reconstruct the entire ancient landscapes of the unit of time that we're studying in this week's module, from the swamps, riverbanks, and lagoons, all buzzing with evolutionary potential. And well, what about here locally in the Appalachian Basin? Again, I like to think of it as a Rosetta Stone of early terrestrial ecosystems. You get animals, plants, but also environmental data, all preserved in one massive ancient system that expands throughout a large section of the North American continent, but then has connections to other parts of the world, showing a globalized picture, ideal for scientists to study, of other groups that increase our biodiversity on our planet. We use these adaptations to connect the dots and use it as a way to explain the rise of groups like reptiles, eventually birds, mammals, including us. When we look at the vegetation, the plants and the trees that first sprouted during the Carboniferous, these helped build these early swamplands and they thus shape the climate, the soils, and also eventually the air that we breathe. This whole water to land saga, well, it wasn't just a leap. It was a series of small steps over a course of, say, 120 million years. But the impact is monumental. And that's really what I want you to take away from this. Because at the coolest parts, these transitional fossils, early tetrapods, allow for the biodiversity to increase on land. And the coolest part is that you can journey throughout places like our local Appalachian Mountains and literally walk on the rocks that recorded it all. So whether you're just a science student taking this class, a nature lover, or someone who just likes a good story, this week's module is for you. It's a tale on how Earth went from blue and bare to green and alive. We'll zero in on limb evolution and how the fin became a foot, and what that tells us about the biomechanics of, say, walking, crawling, climbing, and even breathing. We'll also meet the ecosystem engineers of these Paleozoic swamps, the early tetrapods, but also the plants that paved the way for scientists to also study and document popular modern clades like amphibians and reptiles, but also the human connection, as some of the anatomy found in these early tetrapods can be seen and tracked through history in lineages such as our own. But until then, I want you to stay curious. Explore your backyard like it's a time machine. And remember that the ground you walk on always will have a story to tell. Feel free to message me on what your favorite part of the story was this week. Or better yet, what evolutionary leap blows your mind the most. And if you need some further assistance and support this week, please reach out during my open office hours. I have in-person visits. You can send emails or set up a video chat. I'd love to talk about these types of innovations as a paleontologist because it shows these times of great transition. And what can we learn about it? Either on a biogeographic level and how the ecosystems are constantly restructuring, but also maybe on a more taxonomic or an anonomic level of seeing how these different clades arise and are essentially strangers in foreign lands. Thank you and have an excellent week here in Biology 102.